All Jamal wanted was a quiet evening by the pool instead. He got flashing lights, barking orders, and the ugly face of racism. But what the cops didn't know was, they picked the wrong black man. The evening air was thick with humidity, the kind that hung around your shoulders like a damp towel. The cicadas were out, chirping their summer song, and the pool water glistened under the low-hanging sun like a sheet of liquid glass. Jamal Thompson exhaled, deeply, his chest rising and falling in rhythm with the slow jazz humming through his Bluetooth speaker. This was his favorite part of the day. After hours of negotiating contracts at the firm, sitting through endless Zoom calls, and juggling the stress of managing a high-profile legal team, this was his therapy. Feet up, book in hand, iced tea. Sweating beside him, watching the world slow down, he glanced around the pool deck. It was mostly empty, save for a young couple drying off near the other end. They smiled at Jamal on their way out. He nodded back, the kind of unspoken friendliness that came from being neighbors in a luxury condo building. He'd been living here for 3 years. Gated access, 24-hour security, floor 2, ceiling windows, a far cry from where he grew up in the south side of Chicago. Back then, pools like this weren't even dreams. They were scenes on TV you'd switch away from because they felt too far from reality. Jamal had earned every inch of this piece. He set the book on his lap and took a slow sip of tea, just as the sound of tires crunching over pavement pricked his ears. He turned his head. 2 police cruisers rolled through the entrance gate, something that never happened without being buzzed in. His brow furrowed. Within seconds, the cruisers came to a stop just outside the pool fence, and 2 white officers stepped out. One adjusting his belt, the other already scanning the area like a hawk on the hunt. Jamal didn't move. He knew this posture. He'd seen it too many times before. "Hey," one of them called, approaching the gate. His voice was hard, clipped. "Do you live here?" Jamal blinked. "Excuse me?" I said. "Do you live here?" He took a breath. "Yes, I'm a resident." "Is there a problem, officers?" "Got a call about someone trespassing at the pool," the second cop said, eyes narrowing as he examined Jamal's face, then his clothes, navy linen shirt, khaki shorts, leather sandals. "You have ID on you?" "I do," Jamal said slowly, reaching toward the side table where his wallet lay next to his book. He moved deliberately, aware of how quickly situations like this could spiral. "It's right here. Keep your hands where we can see them," barked the first officer, taking a step closer, hand twitching toward his taser. Jamal froze. "I'm reaching for my wallet," he said, keeping his voice calm, steady. "Sitting on the table. Step away from it." The officer snapped. Jamal stood up slowly, hands raised slightly. His heart was pounding now, not from fear, but from the sheer insult of it. He wasn't a teenager being caught on the wrong side of town. He was a 36-year-old lawyer, a community board member, a man who had worked his way out of the mud. And yet here he was, being treated like a criminal for sitting by his own damn pool. "I'd like to know who made that call," Jamal said, voice even. "Not your concern." The second officer muttered, "We got a report. We're doing our job." Jamal shook his head slowly. "You're doing more than your job. You're harassing a black man because someone thought I didn't belong here." The officers stiffened. That word black changed the air. It made them defensive, edgy, as if they'd been accused of something they hadn't yet acknowledged to themselves. "We didn't say that," one of them shot back. "Let's just see your ID and we'll be on our way. I'll give you my ID," Jamal said, "but I want both badge numbers too." "And your names." They hesitated. "I have every right to ask," he added. "Georgia statute, the 10th of January 35, requires officers to provide identification when requested by a civilian during an interaction. You know that?" Their eyes narrowed. This wasn't going the way they expected. The man they approached wasn't just articulate, he was prepared. They could feel it in his tone, in the sharpness of his gaze. He wasn't rattled. He was tracking them. Jamal slowly reached for his wallet and handed over his driver's license. "That's me, Jamal Thompson. You'll see the address matches this property." One of them looked at the ID and then at the gate's keypad, where a resident access card reader blinked quietly. Still need to verify with management, the younger cop said, now unsure of himself. Go ahead, Jamal said, folding his arms. Mr. Callahan is the property manager. He knows me well. In fact, I helped vote him into his position last year. The officer didn't respond. His partner shifted uncomfortably. I'm also on the HOA board, Jamal continued. Chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. I sit in that same conference room every month, helping draft community policy. Silence. You're being recorded, by the way, Jamal said, nodding toward the blinking red light above the pool entrance. Multiple angles. So if this is some kind of power trip, I suggest you reconsider your next move. Now the older cop visibly bristled. No one's on a power trip. Good, Jamal said, picking up his phone. Then you won't mind me calling Mr. Callahan directly. Let's clear this up. He dialed. The call connected. Jamal put it on speaker. Hello, came a voice. Hey David, it's Jamal Thompson. From Unit 4B, I'm down at the pool being questioned by 2 police officers. They say someone called in a trespassing complaint. A pause. Then what? That's ridiculous. Of course you belong there. Who called that in? Apparently not my concern, Jamal said, his eyes locked on the officers. Mind confirming my residency for them? I'll be right down, Callahan replied. That's insane. Jamal hung up and looked at the cops. He's on his way. I suggest you wait. They didn't respond, but their posture shifted. The aggressive edge was dulled now, replaced by awkward silence. Jamal could feel the change like a current in the air they'd come here expecting. A threat. Instead, they'd found someone who knew the law better than they did. He sat back down in his lounge chair, keeping his phone in hand. I'm just curious, he said, breaking the silence. If I were white, sitting here, same clothes, same drink, same book, would you still have been called? Would you have still rolled in with 2 cars like it was a raid? Neither officer answered right, Jamal said, nodding to himself. Didn't think so? By the time Callahan arrived, red in the face. Holding a clipboard and a folder of residency logs, the situation had already soured beyond repair for the officers. He confirmed Jamal's identity in seconds and then launched into a tirade about racial profiling, police overreach, and potential legal consequences for harassing a paying resident. Jamal didn't say much after that. He didn't need to. The silence of the officers said it all. As they left slower, smaller, quiet, Jamal took another sip of tea, leaned back and looked up at the sky. He knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But they'd made a mistake today. They had tried to shame the wrong man. And tomorrow, he was going to make sure the whole world knew it, sir. We got a call about someone trespassing at the pool, one cop repeated, but there was less confidence in his voice now. Jamal caught it right away. The shift, that little crack in there. Performance where doubt started to seep through. He had seen it many times, when the person they expected to control, to intimidate, didn't respond how they wanted. It was like they were rehearsing lines for a script that no longer fit the scene. That's funny, Jamal replied, voice low, measured, because I'm on the HOA board. In fact, I helped install the security cameras you're standing under. That was my idea. I even pushed to get them high definition, so situations like this could be recorded clearly. The cop holding Jamal's ID suddenly looked up at the camera like he'd just realized it was blinking. He stiffened, his face giving. Nothing away but the sudden rigidity in his jaw said plenty. The second officer, the younger one, seemed less composed. We still have to follow up on the call, he said. If someone makes a complaint, it's our duty to investigate it. Jamal raised an eyebrow. And your protocol is to approach with hands hovering over your tasers? To shout at an unarmed man who's sitting down in broad daylight, wearing pool sandals and reading the warmth of other suns? He held up the book, slowly letting the title be seen. What part of that says threat to you? Neither cop answered. Or is this what your training taught you? Jamal continued, his tone still calm, but slicing through the air like a razor. What? To assume a black man in a quiet place must be out of place? To walk in ready for confrontation because you can't wrap your heads around the idea that someone, like me, could belong here. Sir, with all due respect, the younger cop started, but Jamal cut him off. No, you've already disrespected me. You want to talk about protocol? Fine, then let's be precise. You received a vague call about a suspicious person at a private residential pool. Did you ask for a description? Did you check with the front desk? Or did you roll in here, guns half-cocked, because the description was just black? Again, silence. But the younger cop's face flushed red. Guilt, embarrassment. Both. I'd like to file a public records request, Jamal added. I want the 911 call audio. I want the dispatch report, and I want your dashcam footage. Thank you. Turned off your body cams when you stepped out, and I will find out if you did. That's a violation of policy. The older cop's mouth twitched. We're just here to keep people safe, sir. I am people, Jamal said, and I am safe, or I was until you showed up. The younger one tried again. We didn't mean to cause any trouble. If you're a resident, that's great, okay? That solves everything. Jamal stood up slowly. He wasn't a big man, minus 5'10", lean. Not imposing, but he carried himself with the gravity of someone who knew exactly how much power he had. It wasn't about muscles. It was about presence. Command, I suggest, he said, that you review the footage. I suggest you take this back to your supervisor and talk about what actually happened here. And I suggest you prepare to issue a public apology to this community and to me. You're threatening legal action? The older one asked, but it didn't sound like a challenge. It sounded like a man already trying to calculate his risk. Jamal didn't flinch, not threatening, just informing. I don't make threats. I make moves. Just then, David Callahan, the building's property manager, stepped through the gate. Clipboard under one arm, his shirt sticking slightly to his chest from the heat. He looked furious. Officers, he said sharply, I've already confirmed Mr. Thompson's identity. It's a member of the Homeowners Association. His unit has been in good standing for 3 years. He has every right to be here and to relax in peace without being harassed. The older cop nodded stiffly. Understood, sir? We'll follow up with the caller. We'll be following up too, David snapped. We'll be hearing from the building's legal counsel if I don't see a full incident report on my desk by noon tomorrow. And no, don't expect me to sweep this under the rug. We've had issues like this before, and frankly, I'm sick of it. The cops, now visibly deflated, turned back toward the gate. Oh, Jamal added, almost casually. One last thing, I'm speaking at a city panel next month about over-policing and racial profiling. I think this little incident will make an excellent case study. Don't worry, I'll redact your names, unless you give me a reason not to. Neither officer spoke. They just walked out, shoulders tight, eyes on the ground, and got back. In their cruisers, the gate clicked shut behind them. Jamal stood there for a moment, letting the adrenaline melt off slowly. David shook his head and muttered, "Unbelievable." Before heading back toward the building office, Jamal sat down again, placed the book gently on his lap, and looked up at the sky. It was dusk now, and the sun was just a thin line of orange. Fire at the horizon. The jazz still played softly beside him, but something in the air had shifted. He'd held his ground, but it had cost him something. It always did. He looked down at his phone. Already he had 3 new messages. One from his colleague at the firm, a criminal defense attorney who had just heard something went down. Another from Jasmine, a fellow HOA board member who lived on the 3rd floor and had probably seen everything from her balcony. And one from his brother Malcolm, who had just texted, "Saw the cops at your building. You good?" "What?" Jamal typed. "Back. Yeah, handled it." But his mind was already working faster than his fingers. This wasn't just another bad encounter. This was an opportunity, a spark, a clear, documented example of racial profiling in a secure, upscale community. He knew the game. He knew the law. And he had receipts, camera footage, call logs, an eyewitness property manager, and a firm full of attorneys who respected the hell out of him. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability, visibility. Because if this could happen to him, a man in tailored clothes, reading by the pool of a building he helped manage. What did it say for everyone else? For the kid walking home from work with his hoodie up? For the delivery driver waiting too long in the lobby? He opened his notes app and started typing. Bullet points, names, times, details. Everything was still fresh. The story needed to be told, but not out of anger. Out of purpose. He knew how the system worked, knew how easy it was for things to be buried, ignored, swept aside. But this time, had the leverage. He had the narrative, and he had no intention of letting it go to waste. He texted Jasmine, "Can you confirm you saw the whole thing from your window?" She replied almost immediately, "Yup. Recorded most of it too. Want me to send it to you?" Jamal's lips curled into a quiet smile. "Please do." This was bigger now. Bigger than a man in his book. Bigger than a couple of overzealous cops. And a false call. This was a moment, and Jamal Thompson had no plans to let it pass unnoticed. The next morning, the video exploded. It started small. Jasmine uploaded the footage to a private Facebook group for the building's residents. Within minutes, comments flooded in. Shock, outrage, and above all, recognition. This wasn't the first time a black resident had been questioned, ignored, or dismissed. But this time, it was on camera. This time, the man being questioned didn't just defend himself, he flipped the script by noon. Someone had clipped the best 30 seconds. Jamal calmly standing in front of the officers, explaining the law, asserting his place, then pointing to the cameras. A neighbor added a caption, "Black man harassed by police while sitting at his own pool. Watch what happens next." By 3 p.m., it was all over Twitter, then Instagram, then TikTok. It moved faster than wildfire, cutting through algorithms and timelines like lightning. Comments poured in from every direction. This is why we record everything. Imagine being this composed while being profiled. A man dismantled them with law, facts, and class. Hero. The news came calling before dinner. Jamal sat in his kitchen, phone buzzing every minute. CNN, MSNBC, BuzzFeed News, The Root, Atlanta Weekly. His email inbox looked like a war zone. Dozens of messages from journalists, lawyers, activists, even strangers thanking him for standing up, for staying calm, for not letting it slide. And he wasn't. He'd already filed the public records request that morning. He'd also submitted a formal complaint to the Atlanta Police Department's Internal Affairs Division. It's not a vague, angry letter, a 10-page, meticulously documented report with time-stamped evidence, witness statements, and references to state law and local code. He even included screenshots of the officers' public disciplinary histories. One of them had 2 prior complaints, excessive force and conduct unbecoming of an officer. Neither had gone anywhere. Jamal had learned something in his years of litigation. Just because the system tries to forget doesn't mean the receipts don't exist. The video sparked more than outrage. It sparked movement. By the weekend, protesters gathered outside the Atlanta Police Department's headquarters. Not angry mobs, families, students, professionals, teachers, people holding signs that read "We belong here" and being black isn't probable cause. A city council member reached out to Jamal privately. She said, "I want you to speak at the next public safety hearing." He agreed. But before that, he had another idea. At the next HOA meeting, a monthly formality that usually drew little more than 10 people, over 70 residents showed up. The room was packed, and not just with the usual crowd of concerned retirees and dog owners complaining about barking at night. These were neighbors who'd never come before. Young professionals, couples with kids, renters who rarely felt invited into building politics. They were all here for one thing, to see what Jamal was going to say. He stood at the front of the room, not with anger, not even with pride, but with purpose. He outlined what had happened, the call, the police response, the questioning, the assumptions. He didn't embellish. He didn't need to. The truth was damning enough. Then he turned the page. "I'm not here to point fingers at this community," he said. "I'm here to ask what kind of community we want to be." Silence. Listening. Because it starts here. Not on the news. Not in courtrooms. Here. We can't control every police officer's behavior, but we can control what happens in our spaces. We can control how we treat our neighbors. can control whether we believe a black man by the pool is a threat or simply someone who belongs. Murmurs of agreement, a few nods. Some were uncomfortable, but not resistant. They were just waking up. Then Jamal proposed the initiative, mandatory, anti-bias and de-escalation training for any law enforcement officers assigned to patrol the area. A partnership between the HOA board and the local precinct to establish a community oversight panel, and a policy requiring the building to notify residents when security calls are made to law enforcement. Transparency, accountability, protection. Someone in the back clapped. Then a few more. In the whole room, the vote passed unanimously. But the real moment came a week later. The police department, under increasing pressure, reached out to Jamal and asked him to attend a department-wide training session. As a speaker, he accepted. On one condition: the two officers who approached him at the pool would attend, not in uniform, in plain clothes. In the front row, they showed up. Jamal didn't lecture them. He didn't humiliate them. He told the room what happened. Then he told them what could have happened if he had reached too fast, if he had raised his voice, if he had fit even one stereotype they carried in their heads. "I'm not a hero," he said. "I'm just someone who survived something I shouldn't have had to survive in the first place." The room was still. The older officer, the one who reached for his taser, didn't say anything. But his eyes didn't leave Jamal once. And when it was over, he came up quietly and said, "You made your point, and I heard it." That was all. But sometimes all it takes is being heard. The weeks that followed were filled with meetings, interviews, emails. Jamal was invited onto a national podcast, then a late-night show. He didn't care about the spotlight. In truth, he hated it. But he knew the power of the moment. It wasn't about fame. It was about story, about message. He told his story, and he told it for everyone who couldn't. Young black men who didn't have law degrees, who didn't have the words to defend themselves or the community behind them, or the luxury of surviving long enough to explain they belonged. And something started to shift. The local police precinct launched an internal review. The city council passed a resolution mandating independent review of all trespass-related 911 calls in residential neighborhoods in the community where Jamal lived. It changed, not overnight, not perfectly, but doors opened wider, conversations got deeper, and neighbors looked each other in the eye more often because now they knew what it looked like when someone did. One night a month after it all started, Jamal was back at the pool. Same chair, same iced tea, same book. Only this time, as the sun began to fall and the sky shifted into that soft pink glow, people didn't just pass by. They stopped. They nodded. Some even sat with him, and not because he'd gone viral. Not because he was now a local name, but because they saw him. Truly saw him. Jamal looked up at the sky, fingers resting on the book in his lap. It had taken just 15 minutes to be profiled, 30 seconds of footage to go viral. But a lifetime of grace to respond the way he did. He hadn't just turned the tables, he'd built a whole new room. One where his voice wasn't just defending his right to be somewhere, it was changing the very rules of who was allowed to belong. And that was the real victory. The end.